everyone. So welcome again. Like I said before, this is World NGO Day 2024, and this is an annual day celebrated in commemoration of, this is a day that everyone celebrates, to celebrate all the nonprofits that are doing amazing work. And this year, the theme is building a sustainable future, the role of NGOs in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And I know you all know what the Sustainable Development Goals are. And we're just here to have an amazing conversation with some experts in the impact sector about World NGO Day and also about the SDGs and how nonprofits can contribute to this. So before we get straight into our conversation, it's important that you know who Hexa Media is, just in case you have not come in contact with us before. And so Hexa Media Africa is a full-service digital media agency that helps African nonprofits and impact-driven businesses leverage tech, media, and communications for growth and impact. And not to bore you with all of the work that we do, you can visit our website, www.hexamedia.africa, to learn more about what we do. So, World NGO Day. This year is quite interesting because it is focused on the Sustainable Development Goals that we are all working towards achieving, hopefully by 2030, which I think is a time frame for this one that we have. We should have been able to achieve the goals that we have set. And so World NGO Day is an international day dedicated to recognize and celebrate and also honor all non-governmental and non-profit organizations and the people behind them that contribute to the society all year round. And if you're here, you are a non-profit founder, you are the real MVPs. And I say that because you are contributing to social change, you are contributing to changing the world. I know that in Africa, our governments, like I would always say, are like the second resort, but non-profits, change makers like you here are the ones with a heart for the world, are the ones with a heart to change and make impact. And so I celebrate you today, and I appreciate you all for all of the work you're doing towards making the world a better place. And so this year, like I said before, the theme is building a sustainable future, the role of NGOs in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And this theme simply emphasizes the roles that NGOs play in addressing global challenges and working towards a more sustainable future. There are some of you here who are working to change, make the world a more sustainable place by planting trees. Some of you are here to provide free education so we could bridge the education gap. Some of you are here fighting for gender equality so that there can be more equal accessibility to, things that we need as individuals. Some of you here are fighting against hunger. Some of you here are providing clean water and so many other things that you're doing. Each and every one of you here doing one thing or the other towards the sustainable goal, you are solving a global problem. And so it is important to know the role that you play and how you can work harder to advance and ensure we're able to meet up with our targets for 2030. And so our very first speaker is Mrs. Dolapo Osuntuyi. She is the founder of Dolly Children Foundation, a nonprofit organization which focuses on inspiring African children. Please mute your mic. Thank you. Okay. Wura, could you please mute your mic? Thank you. So, it's focused on inspiring the African child to adopt 21st century skills through education, capacity building, and advocacy programs. Her deep passion for empowering children from low-income backgrounds to achieve equal opportunities was born out of the personal experiences of her dad in his early years. Her work in the foundation, where she leads the organizational strategy and management, has impacted over 22,000 children in 25 communities in 4 states of Nigeria. Dolapo has over 14 years experience in child protection, early childhood and community development programs. She is a graduate of botany from the Lagos State University and holds a master's degree in child health and social care from the prestigious University of Central Lancaster, Preston, United Kingdom. In 2015, she received an African American Institute scholarship to study social sector management course at the Enterprise Development Center, Pan-Atlantic University, Nigeria. In 2021, Dolapo was recognized as one of the 50 African women in development. She has also been featured on a number of platforms, news periodicals, and received several awards and nominations, including a Community Service Award from the Enugu State government. Ladies and gentlemen, please meet Mrs. Dolapo Osunti, who is here with us all the way from Nigeria, and she's going to be sharing with us her own personal experience leading an NGO and focusing on sustainable development goals. Our second speaker today is Dr. Tendai Morita. He is a development practitioner and researcher in the areas of pro-poor development across Africa. He is the founder and executive director of Civio Institute, a Pan-African think tank established in 2018 with a vision of contributing towards the creation of an inclusive society. Tendai's work focuses on reframing thought and bringing new ideas around citizens' agency and solidarity, philanthropy, public policy, citizens and civil society, social entrepreneurship, financial inclusion, and land and agrarian reform across Africa. Tendai Morita is passionate about the African continent and searching for answers and solutions to take it forward. Please welcome Dr. Tendai Morita that is joining us today to share his expert opinion and experience with us today. And also, I'm happy to have join us today Valeria, a cancer research scientist and Ashoka visionary leader, champions social entrepreneurship. With a PhD in oncology, she co-founded Together Women Can, impacting 3,000 women in Kenya with cervical cancer screening. As founder of and CEO of Light Up Impact, she empowers today's young grassroots leaders across East Africa to combat inequalities in health and gender. She supports the Light Up Impact members with community building activities, partnerships, and skill development through community-led approaches. And residing in Eldoret, Kenya, she drives change with passion. And so if your hands are not so busy in your tiny space, I would just like you to just stop where you are for our amazing speakers that are here to share with us all about how we can support and contribute better to the sustainable development goals. And so I'm just going to go straight into what we have today. We're going to be asking questions to all of our guest speakers here and getting their opinion about the sustainable development goals. Yes, and from the very top, I'm going to be starting with Valeria. Today we are celebrating World NGO Day and the theme, Building a Sustainable Future. How do you see the role of NGOs evolving to meet the challenges of achieving the SDGs, most especially in Africa? Valeria, I leave the table for you.
Thank you, Ella. Thank you so much for the very warm introduction. It's a pleasure to be here in this event today with the amazing speakers and participants as well. And thank you very much for this very loaded question as well. I believe, first of all, that all of us that are here, right, in this call today, we are probably NGO leaders or we are working for NGOs. And therefore, I think we all believe that we as NGOs are also a big part of who is driving building a sustainable future, right?
Yeah.
So in my opinion, I mean, since I've been working in the sector for the past 3 years, I've already seen some evolution in the way NGOs are building a sustainable future. And some of the ways that I see that the role of NGOs has been evolving, first of all, is the aspect of not working in silos anymore, even though the problem is still there. I've seen definitely a paradigm shift into the way NGOs are approaching their work. There's more and more an understanding, right? NGOs are called non-governmental organizations. However, there is a need to collaborate and integrate the NGO work with government structures who are working on achieving many of the sustainable development goals there. So I think the first aspects of this evolution is the collaborative part and the understanding that we cannot work on our own. Our projects cannot be independent on what is happening currently in the country, but also our projects cannot be independent in the relationships that we're establishing with other people on the ground that are doing similar work, right? So for me, this is one aspect that I've seen how they are evolving to achieve positively change. And I'm sure that this aspect is one of the ones that will accelerate also that change. Secondly, I think a lot of us here in the call probably are aware on what we mean by shifting power to local organizations, right? So I think also this evolution in mindset, not only from the local organization, but from the international, let's say, actors, in understanding that by realizing the amazing skills and resources that local leaders have, and the way that they can own, they should own the projects, they should own the decisions on how money is used locally, is also what will accelerate the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. And this is also a way in which I think the role of the NGO is evolving, right? We're moving from the realization that power is centered on who has money, and power is centered in the West or in other countries. Power is centered with the local people. Power should be given to the local people because the solutions that they can bring on the ground to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals are the ones that they relate with, right? Are the ones that in the long term will work. So if we're thinking about building a sustainable future, these are all super important aspects. And I think this realization, we also had it last, I mean, at least for us, when we also hold an event with Light Up Impact on this concept of shifting power, we really realized that there is agency that is given to local organizations, and their role, therefore, is changing, right? They're the ones who are now starting to make the decision as always should have been. So I'm very happy, I think, to also be an active part in this movement and in the way the role of NGOs is evolving. And lastly, I think there are two other aspects that in my experience I have observed in the way NGOs are evolving. First one is also the realization that many NGOs cannot ignore that working with young people, right, is what will lead, they're the power hub of Africa, and this is what will lead into a sustainable future. So I see a lot of organizations that also provide inclusion in decision-making progress of the organizations and youth committees and other aspects of giving that power also to the youth, but also listening to their needs, right? And I believe that including also young people into leadership position, not only in NGOs, but also in government and other aspects, is what also will drive that. And lastly, I think the role of NGO is changing in the way we think of financial sustainability. So I don't see anymore like NGOs that they want to purely rely on grants and on donations for their the implementation of their own projects, but I see a shift in thinking on what financial sustainability means for the organization, that we have to diversify, the type of revenues that are coming into our organization, thinking of combining grants and donations with sustainable businesses, perhaps, right? Selling services, selling products, setting up, some sort of agricultural system that would work well and lead to the sustainability of the organization as a whole. So I think I'm very pleased also to see, this shift into the thinking, into social entrepreneurship and what it means from a financial point of view from the NGOs.
Wonderful, wonderful thoughts, Valeria. Fundraising, power shifting to the community where actually, they would be able to give you more informed information and data about how you can help them, having to think differently about a lot of things. And you're really right. A lot of nonprofits are rethinking the way they raise funds and the way they are able to get support for the work that they do, which is great and helps actually in achieving the SDGs faster, because you need money to do some of the work that we do, especially when it comes to reaching out to people and supporting them. So yes, spot on that. Thank you so much. And so I'm going to be moving on to Mrs. Adedolapo. So you have a nonprofit, and you have been doing this for a very long time. And so my very first question to you would be, what inspired you to start, and how and why did you decide to focus on SDG 4? There are so many SDGs, and I know when reading your profile, we mentioned the fact that your experiences from your dad sort of, informed that decision to focus on that. But what exactly beyond that made you, focus on SDG 4, and what inspired you to start? Please share your story with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you so much, Ella, and the wonderful team in Exxon Media Africa for inviting me to this year NGO World NGO Day. And it's nice seeing Valerie and Dr. His name is not, yes. Yeah, he has been hiding his face actually. So it's nice seeing Dr. Marisa too here. So coming to the question I'm being asked, in all fairness, should I call myself an accidental non-profit leader? Let me put it that way. From the beginning of my life, I never thought I would work in the NGO sector, although I'm very passionate about helping people in need. But it all started when I grew up attending an all-girls boarding secondary school. And so it all started with my friend's story. We were in GSS 3. Should I call that basic 9 or year 9? The way they do it in other countries. So, and she just finished helping me trimming my hair because we were all so compulsory to be on low cuts, So, but I've been so very observant about this friend of mine that there's a particular exercise that she has that she doesn't like anybody touching. You dare not even open the first page. And then during the course of our conversation, she had shown me the picture of our sponsor. I know she's Black, but she's showing me a picture of her sponsor. They are white and they are based in Australia. So then I noticed when they drop them on the first day of resumption, they come back to pick them on the last day of of vacation. So I'm wondering that, okay, there's more about this friend of mine. And so that day, I'm not a mischievous person. I'm not a someone. I would never have thought I would do that. I guess my curiosity got the good part of me. So when she told me she forgot something and they said she wanted to go and pick it up, I just raced to, luckily enough, she forgot to lock her desk in the class. So I just raced to the desk, opened it, saw this exercise book, which she must not catch me with. Then within a few minutes, I digested everything in that exercise book. I read how she said she lost both parents. when she was trying to escape from Liberia to Nigeria during the popular Liberian War. And now she had to survive on feeding on grasses, when she was hungry. She didn't know how to swim, but she had to learn how to swim because of the war. She wasn't the only one trying to escape. I read how her father got drowned in the water, and how he died, and now the mother too also died in her presence. So I now connected the dots. Oh, no wonder her set of front teeth were burnt because she was feeding on grass. But that just amazed me how God is, because how can a human being turn to that of a ruminant animal for the period while she was living as a refugee before she now got to Nigeria, and she was picked up by one popular NGO, like they have like a home for children. So when I read about her, and I went home during the school term, I wanted to gist my dad, oh, this was what happened during the time when I was in school and all that. So coincidentally, on that same day that I got it was on a Friday. And so I saw my dad. I was like, okay, telling him about everything. And I said, by the way, Daddy, the shoes I left before I went to the boarding house were already tight. That I will need a new set of shoes. And that's how, a typical African father started saying, oh, girls of nowadays. During our days, that's how he started the story. And I knew the story, but there was something different about him telling me the story that day. We started the conversation around 9 p.m. and we finished up around 12 a.m. And by the time my dad finished about the story, and I looked at him, he was just, sobbing. He was in tears. I couldn't help it but cry with him. And he jotted out of his chair, and I was like, I don't want you to live your life the way I struggled as a child. Because, if not for the free Nigerian Awolowo educational scheme, my dad would not have been able to access the door of a school, of a primary school. And in those days in Nigeria, for a child to go to school, you must have your right hand, when you pass it like this, must touch. Do you understand? So that's the matrix. So imagine somebody that is short will always be turned back, that is her hand, And he told me how when he finished school, how he would go and work on people's farms so that he can raise money to support his mom. And when he finished primary school, there was no sponsorship for secondary. So he worked in different places for 3 years, people promising him, oh, don't worry, I'll send you to school. But when he gets it, they'll be using him as housemaid. So, and in those days, the the mailing system was still really good, like post office. So he actually even had to write a letter to one of his uncle that was staying with, that was maltreating him, to say that his mother sent for him to come back home. So, so he had to borrow the friend's book for 3 years without entering the door of his school. He read commerce, government, everything for 3 years before he was able to sit for GCE, and he passed. So if you look at it, he never stepped into the door of his secondary school before he passed his result and was able to attempt to travel out based on the money he has saved for years. So now, coming to why I started why I was inspired to start Dolly Children Foundation, just basically because of my friend's story and my dad's story. Because by the time my dad finished telling me his story, he jotted out of his chair and told me to kneel down and pray for me. By the time he finished praying, I guess something extraordinary happened that day, because I just noticed I had this passion to help people. And I said, God, that one day when I grow up, I also want to help people in similar situations that will need help. Just help me, So that's why I started little by little. So that's why I said I was an accidental, because I studied botany for my first degree. And I think it was when I was doing my undergraduate studies that I just discovered, no, I can't keep on doing this. I knew I needed to. I started Dolly Children Foundation in 2006. That's almost going to 18 years now, more than that, And so I was still in uni when I started. And so why did I focus on SDG? In all fairness, by the time I traveled out for my master's, I worked there and lectured a bit in the UK before coming back to Nigeria. But I realized that Do you know that, well, thank God I'm from a privileged background, but you know, when it comes to children dropping out of school, in my mind, I thought it was only in secondary school. I never knew that there's really a large population of children stopping primary school, stopping at primary school that they can't afford. And so I had first-hand experience, myself and my team had first-hand experience of that on the field, on the grassroots. And when you ask them, why are you not going to school? They will tell you, oh, the auntie I live with or the uncle I live with told me my destiny cannot sustain me in school. And I'm like, who told you your destiny? Does even the auntie and the uncle know what your destiny looks like? So you could see that, you could see the knowledge gap, you could see the ignorance playing out, you could see poverty too. You know, they can't afford to send the child to school. So what life can they come up with? So if you look at it basically, that was just the reason we were like, it's better to catch them young. Let's start from the grassroots, from the primary school level. I've seen children dropping out of school at primary 1, and maybe we later help them to school. And by the time we help them to school, you see them topping their classes, and you're wondering, assuming that child is not in school, what will happen, you know, to the future of that child? So let me stop at that. So that's just the reason why I started the Little Children Foundation and why I decided to focus on SDG4. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful story. And for every founder, there is always a story behind why they started. And for me, having to listen to these stories actually is interesting because you get to connect with their why and actually understand what drives them. And so I'm really excited to hear your story, and well done on the great work that you do, Ma. So I'm going to be moving up now to Dr. Tendai. So, sir, we would love to know, what are the key opportunities in your experience, having worked with so many organizations? What are the key opportunities and challenges you think the nonprofit sector in Africa should be prepared for in the coming years? Top of mind, I know one already, but then as the expert that you are, I would want you to share with us some of these challenges and the opportunities so that founders who are here listening to us will be prepared and equipped, you know, to fight these challenges and to leverage the opportunities that are available. So over to you, Doctor.
Thank you very much. Confirm you can hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. Good afternoon, colleagues. And thanks to the colleagues from Hexa Media for inviting me to be part of this very interesting panel. I think our first presenter has really taken us sort of on a tour of the changes that we are seeing within the NGO sector when she spoke about social entrepreneurship as part of the new posture or the sort of new pivoting we're beginning to see. But I will start off by saying that Africa itself, if you're looking from an African perspective, since the turn of the century, Africa is changing, and we're beginning to notice a lot of growth of what you may call high net worth individuals. And these high net worth individuals are establishing foundations, and they are most concentrated in countries such as Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, and sprinklings around other countries, Tanzania, etc. So there's a new member in the ecosystem, because in the majority of cases, NGOs are largely supported by institutional funders, are rarely by our governments. So what we're beginning to see is in the traditional sense, most of the funding was coming from our donors who are not based on the continent, or we're coming from INGOs, international NGOs, that will then work with local NGOs as junior partners or last mile service deliverers. But now what we're beginning, especially when we're having this conversation around shifting the power, shifting the narrative, we're beginning to find that we can actually mobilize local resources. So that is number one, the key opportunity. The second opportunity is the widespread of technology, what others are calling fintech, etc. That has allowed us now to begin to move financial resources at the speed of light, literally. So we're beginning to see many tech-focused NGOs or actors that are focused on saying, how do we leverage resources using tech? If you look at Kenya, for instance, with M-Pesa and many other money transfer agencies. So for some of us, what we have done since 2019, so it's 2022 into 2023, and now it's come up with a platform that we call Africa Giving. And it's literally a platform where we are trying to create an ecosystem. In the majority of instances, those who are working at the front lines of change do not have the capacity or even the time to find ways of matching what they do with what those who are not in any way connected to NGOs, but have a passion for supporting African initiatives. So for a long time, we didn't have this platform where you actually try to mobilize individual donors who are based all over the world, globally. But we have a passion to say, I am from Uganda, I am from Nigeria. I have a passion to support the girl child in Nigeria, but I don't know how to do it. So Africa Giving provides that platform where we begin to say, you can actually go to our platform, look at organizations that are listed. We have done all the due diligence. We've taken care of the risks. And any organization that is listed on Africa Giving is actually then something that you can give to, because we actually rate them on the basis of their transparency, compliance, etc. So those are the two great opportunities, aligned, of course, with the opportunity of a growing African or diasporan middle class that is spread all over the world, that has got an interest. So those are the three opportunities. The challenge that we face, we are living in a very different environment. The operating environment is constantly changing. There seems to be a consensus amongst African governments that they are beginning to tighten laws to do with registration of NGOs. They're tightening laws to do with fundraising from outside actors. They are sort of worried about certain sectors, the certain sectors that have become so special to governments that they are concerned about them, especially areas to do with governance, democracy, human rights defenders, etc. So we're beginning to see laws that are similar in nature. If you look at the law that was nearly promulgated and implemented in Zimbabwe, and the law that we have in Tanzania, and the law that they are mooting in Botswana, and the law that may come up in South Africa, similarities around trying to understand the source of funding for NGOs, trying to sort of slow down the ways in which NGOs can register, and also creating an opportunity for governments to intervene in the affairs of NGOs. So as we celebrate World NGO Day, we also need to be cognizant of the challenges to do with what I may call an existential threat to the NGOs, despite the good work that we do. And despite, in many instances, working to complement what governments do and where governments are failing and trying to sort of resolve that gap. But because of the challenges to do with popularity, politics, etc., NGOs are actually struggling. So that's one. Then number two, COVID-19 itself was a watershed moment. In many instances, philanthropy, the way we understood it, got affected significantly by the way in which it reconfigured itself to begin to look in its backyard. So philanthropies began to spend more money in their backyards, especially US-based foundations. If you look at the configuration of their budgets, we began to see them allocating more resources within their backyards rather than into international development, raising a challenge for us to say, how do we plug the gap? So in essence, we have a resource gap for NGOs at the moment. That's why we're engaged in some of these attempts at saying, how do we mobilize individuals to begin to give to important causes and organizations that are working at the front line of change? So I'll leave it for now there around just mapping the opportunities and the sort of the challenges that we face.
Wonderful. I want to stand up and clap, but then I'm cool. Thank you so much, Dr. Great insight with us. And I'm sure everyone has gotten a few things, and you are sort of now seeing where you can make things better and where you should, sort of focus on. And so these conversations are very, very, very important, looking at COVID-19, looking at fundraising, and also building our resources within Africa. These are really, really great insights. Thank you so much. And Valeria, I'm going to be coming back to you right now with another question. what exactly are the types of collaborative efforts that are needed amongst NGOs to make an impact on the Sustainable Development Goals in Africa? And I know you work with a lot of NGOs, and so this question is something that I believe you would be able to throw much more light on.
Thank you, Ella. Yes, I think collaboration is a topic very close to our heart at Light Up Impact, as basically this is what we try to foster, right? A collaboration over competition. So in terms of the type of collaborative efforts that we believe that are needed amongst our NGOs, and especially that we are trying to foster, are efforts that are not centered, on our own personal interests or money-centered. So we should not get into collaborations because we want to get something out of it, out of our personal interests. It should be the first aim, right? It should be because we believe that through this collaboration, the vision that we see, the change that we want to achieve will benefit from that collaboration. And this is what I mean when we say that we have to think broader, right? And give first also when we enter a partnership and a collaboration, and be open to not necessarily get something in return, right? Maybe there is something that you can give towards that collaborative effort that will then lead to the acceleration of the Sustainable Development Goals. So understanding that it's a process of giving and receiving, we should have an open mind when we enter collaborations. The second aspects that I think it's also important, or at least also through our work, is what we try to foster, are collaborations that in the end are low cost. Even to collaborate, right? So there's always some money that needs to be invested. But what I mean by low cost is that we have knowledge and we have learnings that we can exchange and we can share with others, right? And this doesn't always cost a lot. Yeah. So the aspects of being able to have access to platforms that allows you to share what you know so they can help somebody else in achieving their goal in sustainable development, I think is of great importance. I wish there would also be, in general, more investment in fostering the collaborations that need instead that close connection, for example, on the ground. That brings, of course, costs. An example is actually many of our founders that collaborate, but I saw Cleophas in the call. He is part of this System Changer Network Kenya. It's part of 8 NGOs. And they collaborate closely based on exchanging expertise, right? So we also need to think that as NGOs, we cannot be the experts in everything, right? There's our neighbor that maybe can come and teach us how to set up chicken farming or some other aspects that is relevant for their work. So I think this type of exchanging and closely collaboration of what we know can definitely help achieve Sustainable Development Goals. And I think the last aspects of collaboration is that we have to think it in a broader aspect on how is this in the end affecting the systemic change that we want to see. So collaborations amongst NGOs, but not only that, collaboration of different aspects and different actors, of the ecosystem we are operating in. And collaborating with the different aspects, with the different actors of the ecosystem is also what leads to the knowledge of the ecosystem and how can we then strategically intervene through collaboration to change policies, to change how things should be done in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. So this is, I would say, is our take on how we see different types of collaboration that would make an impact.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And when you were talking about knowledge sharing, it reminded me of when Light Up Impact and Hexa Media collaborated to share knowledge that we had, to our community. And it was really impactful. And I could see, I was following through after the webinar to see that a lot of organizations were, putting all of this into practice. And not everyone knows everything. So it's important that we share so that someone can definitely benefit. It's not always about the money. So thank you so much for shedding light on that. I hope you guys learned that it's not all about collaborating for funding purposes. It's also collaborating to be able to achieve the sustainable development goals. And so, Doctor, I'm going to come back to you again to ask another very important question. So now that you've mentioned some of the challenges and the opportunities, what do you think are the important steps that NGOs need to take to empower marginalized communities, that their voices are heard and their unique challenges are addressed in the journey towards sustainable development?
Wow, quite a mouthful.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, quite a mouthful. So I'll start off by just saying, I think we need to go back to basics as to remember as to why NGOs emerged. NGOs emerged as a criticism or a critique of the overwhelming bureaucracy in government, and that governments were not able to reach out to all because they were slow in implementing change. And also we noticed that the market was leaving so many behind. So there was need for a third actor, a third sector, which became the NGOs. And so the NGOs at that moment, they were said to be nimble, and that they were said to be innovative, that they could pilot initiatives, and when successful, they could then replicate them at scale. So I think sticking to the basics, I think we still need to think about that as a formula to say we need to be more innovative in how we do our work and to begin to come up with new pilots, then replicate. But then I want to come back to the issue of voice. I've noticed that in many instances, especially in my country, Zimbabwe, a number of our colleagues in the NGO sector have spent a lot of resources on what you may call awareness raising on rights. So communities are taught about the rights, they're taught about what is in the constitution, etc. And we're spending budgets around it. But I do not think, especially when we're talking about SDGs, which mostly focus on social and economic rights, which others may call the secondary rights, that they can be achieved merely by knowing rights and demanding that governments, which are already struggling with effectiveness, struggling with budget cuts, etc., can then deliver them. So I think we need to reconnect with the spirit around at the formation, at the re-establishment of NGOs in the 1950s, thereabout, to begin to say, we need to stick to saying, what pilots, what innovations can we put in the space in dealing with marginalized communities? It's a landscape of brand new opportunities, sort of through tech, through new resources, etc. But also it's a landscape of new challenges, climate change. Many of our communities are still dependent on rain-fed agriculture, etc. So just making them aware of their rights is not sufficient. It's good, it's a starting point, but I believe that voice comes when communities are we surface urgency amongst communities, that they can begin to establish their own cooperatives, their own associations. They can rediscover community assets. They can produce amongst themselves. They can actually reinvent the local economy. We can empower the girl child and the young men to go back to school, that they have these, they can see the horizon and the opportunities therein. The moment these communities are engaged and they've surfaced their own agency, I can assure you it is easier for them to rediscover their voice, and even their terms of engagement with office holders tend to change, rather than them being invited into spaces that have been established either by government elites, political parties, or NGOs themselves. They are the ones who establish new platforms where people are invited to begin to say, how do we partner? So we have to rethink communities from a co-production perspective, co-creation perspective. So I think the first task that we have as NGO practitioners is to say, how do we help communities to rediscover their agency? And the second task is to help them map the assets that are within those communities that they can leverage to create dynamic local economies. So once we get to that place, the issue of voice will become mute. We actually realize that they will have their own voice. They'll be active. They'll begin to make demands as empowered people. I'll stop here for now.
Thank you so much. Involving the communities in the process and ensuring that they are able to come up with, creative solutions for themselves. So guys, let's go back to where we started from, like Doctor said, so we can reinvent or use the innovations of the time to make things better, right? So that we can empower the communities that we work with as much as possible. I think Valeria has already spoken also about involving communities in the process, and Doctor is mentioning it again. So this means this is very important. Let's try as much as possible to involve them. And so, Mrs. Adedolapo, I'm coming back to you again. And we're looking at measurement of impact this time. And I know you've worked so much in the nonprofit space and you have been able to track progress. And so how can you advise other nonprofits listening to us? How can they measure the impact of their work towards achieving the SDG goals? And what metrics do you use to track progress and also evaluate success? This question is very important because we find that a lot of nonprofits are just interested in doing, creating, and not actually measuring the impact of their creations or their activities, and you're just adding to the numbers. I want to stop there. Let you answer the question, because if I continue talking, I'm going to break some tables right now.
Okay. Thank you so much. Well, I would advise or counsel other nonprofits that in order to measure their impact in a very for them to achieve a successful outcome, in the evaluation of the project they do, it's good that they set clear objectives. They set clear objectives that closely align with the SDG goal that they're working, they're solving. Like setting up clear specific objectives that will let them know, okay, they are still in track, that will always make them to know they are still in line with what they're doing. And also they should come up, setting up these clear objectives will also enable them to establish key performance indicators. For you to know that you're doing something well. Our own work with SDG 4 is different from somebody that is solving SDG 3, SDG 5. You have to come up with clear KPI, that will help you to know that, yes, that will help you to be able to track the progress. Because if you are able to do that, not only your volunteers, the founders, the partners, the sponsors, they will know that every in-kind donation, whether it's in-kind donation or kind donation that they give you, you are actually using it for what you said you are going to use it for. You are actually using it to solve the problem you said you're going to solve it for. So I would suggest that they come up with clear KPI, establish that. And another thing I would say is that they should collect relevant data. There's no way, you can't run away from data when you are trying to measure the impact. Collect relevant data in the area of the activities, input, output, outcome, even because if you look at it, input, output, outcome, it follows line by line. It's like it takes a process, So that's very actually important, because we are at this age now that you can't just come up with a figure, you can't just come up with something. As time goes on, the people that are watching, they will know whether you're doing the real work or not. So that's very, very important. And then they should also engage stakeholders. Valerie said about involving stakeholders, involving the community, involving the beneficiaries, involve the stakeholders. Beneficiaries are part of the stakeholders. Involve whether it's the government agency you are working with. I understand what Dr. Morisa said about the government trying to really be stringent, really be tough on NGOs And you won't blame them, in all honesty. You won't blame them because, we've had bad examples of people showing that they want to do this, but actually they are not doing what they said they want to do. And so they had to come up with laws to ensure to keep everybody in track. But even if, let's say, the governments have, like, let me say, like a bad motive, or maybe interior motive towards NGOs, we that we are doing the good one, the good ones that we are actually doing the work, if we're trying to be thorough with every of the processes that we set to achieve, we will convince them and let them know that, yes, there's still some people out there that are really doing the work. So I think it's very important that stakeholders are being given feedback and insights to what, and when you're giving stakeholders feedback, insights, you have to also be creative about it. Are you going to come up with infographics? It has to, NGOs need to find creative way of communicating with stakeholders, just to make them to be interested, to get them interested and involved in their work. I've seen people that they just decided that they are just observing maybe the work that we're doing from afar, and before you know it, they translate, the relationship group from being an observer to a volunteer, from volunteer to a partner to a sponsor, it's all about trust, and also we should also try as much as possible to always go back to the drawing board. Both Valerie and Dr. Marisa have said that when COVID happened, a lot of dynamics, new things came on board. Now, I think I remember one fundamental time during the course of work so far in my journey. I think after when we clocked 5 years, we had a stakeholders meeting with our board to be sure that, okay, we've been doing this for 5 years. Are we doing it well? Are we doing it well? In all honesty, we've shut down some programs that we felt, why I said we should also be very mindful, in the sense that in the process of you trying to solve a problem, you don't know whether you're even causing other problems. So we need to also really be focused, to be sensitive to the environment, to be sensitive to time, and all that. And then we should also be transparent with everything. Are you doing your annual reports? Are you doing your financials? As time goes on, there are things that will evolve that that, yes, this has to be part of our process, So, like now for us in Dolly Children Foundation, I think I'm going back to the second question, matrix that we use to track our progress. We are education focused, So, and for the children that we work with, we use punctuality rates, their admission rate. Are they always punctual in school? Are they always punctual in school? We also look at their enrollment rates. We look at their transition rates. We look at the academic performance. We come up with different mentoring programs, different development initiatives. We also look at their participation rates in those programs, And we also look at the income level, of their caregivers. Sometimes you work with people and you discover what they said at the beginning when you met them that they really needed them. It's different from what, the story is. So, those are all the things we put on ground to know, okay, this child that we've been sponsoring for a good number of years, are they doing it well? Like now, if not for the fact that we're trying to measure our impact, there's a particular community that we worked with. In fact, virtually when we entered that community, the particular community school was as far as dead. You understand what I'm saying? We wrote letters to the government that we're interested in, coming on board to support. They said no problem, although they didn't give us money, but it's just that support, that approval is fine. We came into the community, we changed the people's perspective, about education there, because this particular community, they don't believe in education as such. So, and that community have a very high rate of primary school dropouts. So by the time we started, we noticed that if anybody comes to say they want to maybe give them, republish the classroom, we have, should I call them lynches, street lynches there, that they will always harass them to say, oh no, you can't do that, you have to pay us. And now, me being a woman, I went there, myself and my team. There was a particular day I went there. One of the guys approached me that he's going to use a gun to blow my legs the next time I call them. Wow. Yeah, they told me so. And I told them that we are not here to cause any harm. We're just here to advance the community, that their children will benefit. So I think the following time I went there, I told my team, we got them drinks. We gave them drinks. They became the guards, the local guards for that particular primary school project. If they see anybody doing driving lessons, because we saw that when they're driving cars, they just, you know, learners, they will just use their car to hit the wall, break it down, and nobody will hold them, But right now, I mean, this school was founded in 1955. They never had a toilet when we got there. Most of the children have dropped out of school. But because of the programs we do there right now, I can tell you they have more than 400 children right now there. We even had to come up with a fence. It's over 70-meter perimeter long fence, to do it there. We put a gate and a signage there just to make the children safe that, yes, I'm in a school. You understand? So I'm just giving you a practical, example. And again, one thing I also had to this is that after all said and done, you are able to come up with KPI, you're measuring your impact to say, yes, this is what you've done, this is how you've done it, you are transparent. It's also good to come up with creative way to write your story. There was you suffered it a lot. In fact, one of our partners during the partnership forum said, we see what you do. We see how you people post on social media, you've done this, you've done that. But we notice you have done a lot on the ground, at the ground level, but you're not really saying it you're not really telling us a lot about what you've done. That made me to go back, to go and take courses on storytelling. We've had people maybe that are just on social media friends, they will come to the site to say, let me see what you've done, to be sure that what you people, I know when they get there, they'll be like, wow, they're amazed, you understand? So I don't want to talk much, but I hope I've been able to communicate, on this topic. Thank you so much.
Yes, you have most definitely so many tips that you have shared, and I hope you guys were taking notes, because a lot of these things are very important and they are going to definitely help us. So before we move up to the very last part of this webinar, where we're going to be getting final thoughts from our speakers, I just want to introduce to us 27 African nonprofits that are achieving the SDGs. We have put together all of these amazing organizations. There are so many of them, and it was quite difficult for us to actually select. But we have selected 27 because it is 27th February, World NGO Day. So 27 to celebrate 27, right? And so that's why we selected 27. And you can just see some of them doing amazing work all across Africa. We have people from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Zimbabwe, from Kenya, all through the page here that you're seeing. You can learn more about these organizations by visiting our Instagram page and our YouTube channel, where we have shared a lot of information about these people. We are hexamedia.africa on Instagram. On LinkedIn, the same thing. Our website, like I said before, www.hexamedia.africa. You're going to get access to all of these people, so you can see which organization you actually want to work with, or any organization you can connect, partner with, collaborate with, all of that. And I hope all of this will definitely yield some results and some fruits in the future. So, final words before we call it a day. And I'm going to start with you, Valeria. Is there anything you would want to say as a word of advice to nonprofits that are working to achieve the SDG goals? Is there any final thing you would like to say? We've asked so many questions and there have been so many thoughts shared, and I know people have questions, but before the questions, are there any final words? I'm just going to be going through the chat now to see if there are questions. But any final words before we take up the questions?
Thanks, Ella. I think maybe as final words, I know there are many NGO founders in this call, so I would just like to tell them, not to give up on their dreams, despite the difficulties that we all face, right, in our everyday NGO world. talking about how we collaborate with others, as we talked about today, and how can we find the resources, right? Sometimes it's hard to balance that. It's hard to balance also our mental health. So it's really important, I think, also this aspect, because if we want to all build sustainable futures, we need to also take care of ourselves, right? So I would say I would just like to appreciate also the speakers and all the people in the call. And for me, also a key takeaway of the session is maybe, because you put it up, also something, it's about that we cannot do this alone, right? So one of the SDGs, partnership for the goals, is key. So I would hope that at least our discussion or the people in the call are inspired to collaborate to create change. So these are my final remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Valeria. Dr. Marita, any final words of advice or anything you want to share finally?
Thank you very much. And thanks so much again for having me.
Thank you.
I think we're living in uncertain times, a very difficult moment for all of us here in Africa and even globally.
Yeah.
There are so many things that are shifting, so many changes that are happening since what I call maybe a watershed moment in COVID-19, followed by the conflict in Ukraine, and now what is happening in Gaza. And that has shifted so many things. I think NGOs remain the last line of defense in terms of sustaining livelihoods, in terms of cohering life the way we understand it. For some of us who are in Southern Africa, we are facing a drought which may have major impact on livelihoods. And again, we expect to see NGOs at the front line in terms of food relief and trying to ameliorate the crisis. So I think, given that there are NGO leaders here, it's just to say that for every challenge and every context, there's an opportunity. So even in these uncertain times, our innovativeness should be leading us to identify opportunities within every crisis and beginning to use it to help us to move and to navigate within the scope of the mission, but to begin to find relevance and to realign our strategies with what communities need. And that is going to take a lot of learning and unlearning, and also a lot of humble collaboration, looking for people who do not look like us. It's easy to collaborate with a fellow NGO, but it's tough to collaborate with a private sector company. It's tough at times to collaborate with a local municipality. But we're living in unusual times, and those kind of collaborations out of our comfort zones are possibly what is needed at the moment. And also just working with an asset-based mindset to begin to look at what we have before we look at what we don't have. So I'll end it here, but just to say that thank you so much. I wish we could have more of these conversations rather than waiting on our World NGO Day. But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Dr. We would definitely work to seeing how we can have more of these conversations, and definitely invite you again to share with us your thoughts and your expertise. Thank you so much. Okay, Ma, final thoughts from you for the founders here today.
Okay, so my key takeaway or final thoughts is that NGO founders in this room should prioritize collaboration. You can't do it alone. There's something Valerie said, that self-care. If you think you can solve all the whole problem, oh, I want it to be all about me, the person will crush and will be stressed. You know, so, and our bodies are like our engines. So we need to take out time to, and you know, there's something about you collaborating with another NGO individual such that you'll be able to even scale up and reach wider, you know, range of people. So you should prioritize collaboration. You should also leverage on technology for greater impact. COVID has changed the dimension, you know, about technology for us. So leverage on that. And if not for technology, I won't be talking to Valerie. I won't have had the chance to meet Dr. Marisa here in the room. So we should leverage on technology for greater impact. We should also try to engage stakeholders because if you don't engage stakeholders, there's no how you can tell your story to them. Nobody can tell your story for you better than you. So it's very, very important you do that. And you should also seek mentorship. and guidance for support. You know, there's a quote that if you stand on the shoulders of giants, you will not make the mistake that they have made. So when you seek mentorship, whether it's free or paid, it goes a long way in helping you to prepare you for this ahead. But aside that, I think one last thing I would say is storytelling. I've said it before, nobody can tell your story better than you. So
Yeah.
always look for a creative way to tell your story so that, who knows, maybe very soon myself and Valerie will, collaborate on a project, or Dr. Marisa,
I would
So,
love to see that.
thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Great, great stuff right there. Share your stories, find more ways to collaborate, innovate, leverage technology as much as possible. And this has been an exciting conversation. And like Dr. Marisa said, we should actually do this more often.